welcome back to the University of Guelph Arboretum. My name is Kitty, and behind the camera there, that's Jenny.
Hello!
And we are going to bring you on another exploration of the Arboretum grounds today. Right now, we are standing in the OAC 56 Park in the Garden. So as you can see, it's a pretty amazing space. It's a lot of open lawn with 20 different specimen trees planted here to give some nice shade. And every single one of these trees was picked for their form and leaf color or texture. And along with those trees, we also have pathways and benches and verge plantings all framing the park. And all of this area was actually designed after the late 19th century idea of a large open public space as defined by the designer Frederick Law Olmsted. So all in all, it's a really great place for you to come and just take a leisurely stroll or have a relaxing picnic and come enjoy your time outdoors. So we're gonna take a walk around this garden and see if we could find some interesting things to look at. So follow me. So our very first stop in this park in the garden is actually this little tree right beside me. So this is a tree we call Eastern Flowering Dogwood. Now it's called flowering dogwood because earlier in the year it would produce tiny little yellow flowers, clusters of yellow flowers at the tips of its branches. And these yellow flowers are actually surrounded by 4 really showy white leaves that kind of look like petals. So this becomes a big landmark to help attract insect pollinators to help pollinate this plant. So that's really awesome. The flowers are actually little and yellow, but these big white petals surround the flowers at the tips of the branches and look like bigger petals of a larger flower. So it's a pretty spectacular sight to see earlier this year. But now, in the late summer, early fall, we can see some of the berries. So you'll notice on the tree, and there's a good one here, it produces these beautiful bright red berries. So these berries are no good for humans to eat, but they actually provide food for over 50 different species of small animals and birds. So lots and lots of mammals and birds eat these berries. It provides a really good food source for a lot of wildlife. So it's a pretty fantastic tree. And not only that, but this tree actually is endangered here in Ontario. So that means there aren't a whole lot of them left out there in the wild. They are more abundant further down south near the middle of their range, but in Ontario they live only in southern Ontario in the Carolinian zone. So they're threatened by things like habitat destruction and fragmentation, where the places they live are being destroyed and the trees that are left in the wild are too far apart to reproduce. So some of those threats are really harmful to Eastern Flowering Dogwood out there in the wild, and unfortunately they are endangered here in Ontario. So being able to see one in an arboretum like this is really special. And if you actually take a good close look at the branches and at the leaves, you can learn how to identify a dogwood just like this. So to identify things like dogwoods, we can take a look at their leaf arrangements. A lot of dogwoods and some other trees as well have what we call opposite leaf arrangements. So you can see how there's 2 leaves here opposite to each other on the branch, and another 2 here, although this one seems to have fallen off, but another 2 here, another 2 here. So the leaves are arranged opposite to each other on the branch. This is different to some other plants which may have alternate leaf arrangement, which means they have 1 leaf here, another leaf here, another leaf here, another leaf here. So they're not opposite to each other on the branch. But a lot of dogwoods, just like the Eastern Flowering Dogwood, have this opposite leaf arrangement. And that is something you can look for to identify certain trees like this. For example, if you find a tree out there in the wild and you know that it's native to Ontario and you can see that it has alternate or opposite leaf arrangement where the leaves are opposite of each other on the branch, then you can use a little acronym to help narrow down what species you're looking at. We use the acronym MAD, so M-A-D, which stands for maples, ashes, and dogwood. So all of these different species actually have opposite leaf arrangement on their branches. There are some exceptions like alternate leaf dogwood, but a lot of those trees have opposite leaf arrangement, and that can help you narrow down exactly what you're looking at. So this is a really good example of a dogwood with opposite leaf arrangement and an endangered species at that. So pretty spectacular to see out there in the wilds and right here in our arboretum. So let's go on and see if we can find another thing to look at right here in the park and the garden, and I will turn it actually over to Jenny. Yeah, so the park and garden is pretty spectacular. We have all these different types of trees, but one of the features I really like is a special little fungus that we found here for several years in a row now. So let's see if we can find it again this year. Alright, so we're right here underneath the Morgan red maple, and it's nice and shaded here. So in the mulch, a lot of times we find really cool fungus popping up. So let's see if we can find this fungus that we want to see. And I think I see some right here. So another year in a row we have these cool guys. And this is called a bird's nest fungus. And you can kind of see why it's called that, right? So the fungus forms this little cup, and it has little ball-like structures on it inside that look like eggs inside of a nest. And interestingly enough, when you first look at this, it doesn't look like your stereotypical mushroom with a cap and a stalk, but it kind of serves the same purpose as that cap and stalk mushroom. So a lot of times when you look at a fungus, the part that you see that's growing on the substrate, whether that's like the mulch or a log or something like that, that is actually just the reproductive structures. So it's kind of like what the fungus is using to disperse its spores and hopefully start off new fungus organisms. Whereas most of the fungus you don't normally see, it actually is this network of thin thread-like hyphae. It forms a network called mycelium that's kind of integrated into the substrate it's growing on. That's what part of the fungus is breaking down that substrate for nutrients. So what we see here, this fungus, this mushroom, is actually not the entirety of the organism, but it's really, really cool. So because this structure, if we look closely, is made for dispersing its spores, it has a special mechanism to do that. So the reason this fungus is shaped like this is those eggs in the middle are the packets containing the spores, and the nest around it, that cup, is meant to catch water as it rains. And as water from a raindrop falls into that cup, it's gonna eject those spores out, sometimes 3 to 4 feet away. And hopefully those spores then end up far away in a nice hospitable place where it can grow into another fungus, which is really, really neat. So that is something to keep an eye out for next time you're in the park, in the garden. Neat little bird's egg fungus. It's so small, not a lot of people notice it, but I think it's pretty special. But of course, it doesn't stop here. There is another kind of tree in this space we wanted to visit really quick for this video. So follow me on to our next little stop. are. We have 2 trees here framing the pathway. And why don't we get a little closer one look at it? But these trees are pretty special. This is a dawn redwood. And these guys are kind of like living fossils as a species. So fossils of this tree has been found like 90 million years ago. And actually for a while they were thought to be extinct until they were rediscovered in 1940s by somebody in a pretty remote area. And since then they've made kind of a comeback. They've become pretty popular street trees and garden trees. So you can see them in planted areas, which is pretty neat. And we have a couple specimens here in the Arboretum. But one of my favorite things about dawn redwood is that it is a deciduous conifer, which, you know, at first sometimes makes people scratch their heads. A lot of times when we see a coniferous tree with cones and these kind of needle-like leaves, people associate it with being evergreen, like it's not gonna lose leaves, it's gonna stay green all year round. But coniferous does not always equal evergreen. Some trees, like dawn redwood, is actually deciduous. Despite having these needle-like leaves and producing cones, making it coniferous, in the fall, these guys actually start to change color, just like a broadleaf tree, like a maple tree or something. They'll change to this brilliant yellow, and they'll drop their leaves for the winter. And every spring, they'll grow those leaves again. So that's kind of an interesting thing about these guys. Kind of unusual for a coniferous tree, but it definitely happens. So there you have it, folks. 3 kind of cool features we wanted to show off here at the park in the garden. But definitely there's so many trees and other organisms to explore here. If you're in the area, we definitely encourage you guys to have a walk through this space and see what kind of neat things you might find. So thank you guys so much for joining us this week, and hopefully we'll see you next week.